Today I'm here to share some haunted images with you, specifically demonic or church-related photographs. Let us know what you think of these images in the comments below. Do you think they're genuine? Are they hoaxes? With all that said though, I'm your host James, and these are the top 10 dark photos hidden by the church that will haunt you. We're starting things off with the Guildhall Ghost. This photograph was taken in 1985, which is kind of surprising. It looks like something taken in 1925. What we're looking at here are members of the Coventry Freeman organization at St. Mary's Guildhall in Coventry, UK. They're bowing their heads in prayer. They're at a dinner service. In the top left-hand corner, though, we see a figure that seems to be wearing a long robe of some kind. They're not dressed like anyone else there. We're all mostly in suits and ties. Now, what makes this photo so creepy is that apparently nobody had seen this robed figure before until the film was developed and they looked at the image. Lord Mayor Walter Brandish, who was at the dinner, claimed there was no one in that spot at the time and nobody who had been dressed like that at the entire event. You can also see that whoever or whatever this figure is, it's pretty tall, a head or two taller than most of the people in the photo. Only thing scarier than a ghost is a really tall ghost. Number 9, the Devil Portrait. This is a photo taken of an infamous image of the devil depicted in one of the most supposedly cursed books in history, the Codex Gigas, aka the Devil's Bible. Yeah. The Devil's Bible. Wonder why the church wouldn't want this book getting around. It's believed to have been written between 1204 and 1230, year-wise, not time of day, and changed hands several times before being housed in Sweden's National Library in 1768, where it still sits today. The book contains the Old and New Testament, as well as a plethora of other information of the time, but it's the magic spells that place the book in that cursed category, as well as the image of the devil, of course. And legend has it that this is not just any mere depiction of Satan. There's a dark tale behind it. It's said that the Codex Gigas was written by a monk who had broken his vows in some way and was being sentenced to death. There are many versions of the tale, but the point is he attempted to cut a deal. If he could write a book containing all the world's knowledge in a single night, his life would be spared. This is of course an incredibly unfair and impossible task, unless you have some sort of deity helping you, right? And said monk was tempted by the devil himself and ended up selling his soul to him in order to help complete the book. And this demonic portrait is actually said to be Satan's own doing, his very signature, which he signed at the end. It's also, in some versions, the monk drew it as a tribute to him as well. Number 8, the White Lady of Worstead Church. Taken in August of 1975 by Peter Berthelot, who is visiting the Church of St. Mary's in North Norfolk with his family. It shows his wife Diane sitting on a church bench, head bowed as she prays. Now, Peter claimed that there was nobody sitting behind his wife when he snapped the picture, but once they were showing their pictures in a slideshow several months later with some friends, one of them chimed in asking, "Diane, who's that sitting behind you?" They looked closer at the photo and were like, "Yeah, who is that?" Diane was quoted saying, "When we saw the white figure sitting behind me on the projector screen, we just stood there with our mouths open." Looking closely at the ghostly figure, it almost looks like a woman wearing a bonnet. Peter and Diane took the photo back to the church, where the vicar told them the story of the White Lady, the ghost of a woman who appears to those who need healing. And apparently at the time the picture was taken, Diane was having some health issues and was on antibiotics. Next up, we have the Sefton Church Ghost. In Maryside, England, just north of Liverpool, stands the Sefton Church, which finished construction in the 16th century. This image here was taken in 1999, and you can clearly see what looks to be a priest standing there. It's a cool photo, but looking at it without context, you wouldn't really think there's anything supernatural about it, if it weren't for the fact that the photographer, Brad Steiger, said that there was only one other person with him in the church at the time, another photographer who was standing right beside him. So who is the person or specter in this picture? Could it be the spirit of a former priest that still lingers within the walls of the church, or is it the same ghost that apparently haunts a pub next door called the Punch Bowl? Maybe it's both. I looked it up on Google Maps. The Punch Bowl is still there, literally right next door. It's an old-timey looking pub. It could be haunted for sure. At number 6, we have the Hospital Demon. This next image is incredibly mysterious, as there's not a lot of information on it. All we really know, or at least have been told, is that the image was supposedly snapped photographed by a nurse at an unknown hospital in an unknown state. It was taken on a security camera and shows a patient lying in bed, and crouching on top of them is what looks to be some sort of demonic entity. It looks very much like your archetypal devil. You can see what looks like horns on its head. Its legs almost look goat-like with hooves. It's very creepy, even if it is a total hoax. Again, there's not much information on this image, but apparently the entity appeared briefly, and just a few hours after it showed up, the patient died. Is this the image of a genuine demonic entity waiting for the patient to pass before dragging them to hell? Is it just a hoax? Let us know your thoughts in the comments once again. And we're going back to the realm of cursed books now with the Grand Grimoire. This image here is one of the many illustrations associated with the Grand Grimoire. It's a textbook of sorts containing all sorts of black magic spells, believed to have been written in 1702. The book gives a detailed description on how to summon a specific demon and the tools used in order to make it do your bidding. It also contains various spells used for winning the lottery, communicating with the dead, making yourself invisible, etc. I don't know. I gotta get my hands on this book. The book was readily available and became quite popular in France in the 19th century, and the church set out to vilify it, claiming this book and others like it to be sinister and dangerous, and their campaign was pretty successful. The book kind of died in popularity because, you know, people don't want demons in their houses, I guess. Don't know why. At the number 4 spot, we have the ghost of St. Botolph's. Now, to the untrained eye, this image looks pretty innocuous, right? It just looks like a church. But take a close look at the top right-hand corner. We'll zoom in for you. Yeah, it seems to be a ghostly figure standing by the balcony. The photo was taken in 1982 by a man named Chris Brackley. Apparently, he hadn't seen anyone standing by the balcony when the photo was snapped. It wasn't until he developed the picture that this strange entity showed up. The picture was analyzed extensively, and it was determined that it wasn't the result of double exposure. Chris's equipment seemed to be operating fine too. A few years after the picture was taken, Chris was contacted by a builder who had done restoration work on a crypt at the church, and apparently the builder had knocked down a wall and accidentally disturbed a coffin. Inside of it was a woman whose face was eerily similar to the one captured in Chris's picture. This next image was posted to Reddit by Reddit user u/luciddream a few years back with the caption, "Real ghost or demon on the reflection of one of my friend's photos." Now, this is an image that would be really easy to fake, of course, but all the same, I hate this. This is a freaky picture and it makes me uncomfortable. It's hard to make out exactly what we're looking at here, but it's a picture taken of a mirror and you can see the reflection of a woman lying on the bed, and behind her is, yeah, I don't know what. I hope it's a dog, but it looks more like some sort of ghostly or demonic entity with a mane of messy black hair, very Grudge-esque. It's just your perfect example of a cursed image. There's just something off about it. I don't have a whole lot to say about this one, as there's not a lot of info on it, but it's eerie. It's eerie. And at number 2, we have the cave demon. There aren't a whole lot of supposedly real photos of demons out there, but this one has been floating around the internet since the late 90s. According to the legend, 2 boys from England had been exploring a cave in the United Arab Emirates. At one point, they heard a man scream. It was too dark for the boys to make out anything, so they pulled out their camera and snapped a picture with the flash on. For a moment, the cave lit up, and they saw this goblin-like creature clinging to a rock. The boys immediately turned around and ran out of the cave as fast as they could. And finally, at our number 1 spot, we have the Spectre of Newby Church. This is a pretty famous image, said to be one of the most convincing ghostly photographs ever taken. This photo was snapped in 1963 by Reverend Kenneth F. Lord, great name, in the Church of Christ the Consoler, located on the grounds of Newby Hall in North Yorkshire, UK. The Reverend had been snapping pics of the church, and when the photos were developed, he noticed this mysterious, semi-translucent, cloaked figure standing at the church altar. He'd been completely alone in the church at the time. At least that's what he thought. First glance, it looks a bit like a plague doctor to me, almost. Skeptics took one look at this picture, though, and immediately called it a hoax, saying that the image was most likely the result of double exposure. It just looked too clear. The church was also not said to be haunted either. But the Reverend was adamant that what he took was real and sent the picture to experts to be examined, and it was determined at the time that the photo hadn't been tampered with at all. According to them, what was captured here was genuine. Whether it's an actual ghost or not, however, is still up in the air. This is also one that's really tall too. It's determined that whatever that thing was about 9 feet tall, so that is a very tall ghost. No thank you.
Kicking off the list at number 10, the Tulip Staircase. We'll dive right into the spooky goodness with a 1966 classic. August 8th, 2019. It's around 1 a.m. in the home of an unnamed family. Always a good sign. I've seen too many of those paranormal activity movies to watch this. This is creepy. I wouldn't even be able to watch footage of my own house with those like hidden cameras, you know what I mean? Like I'd be afraid to go through and scroll. What if I find something? Then what? The cat doesn't notice anything in this video, which is either a really good sign or a really bad sign. Because cats see everything, right? They're so mischievous. Cats will be like mid-conversation and all of a sudden just... Number 7, playtime. We know demons like to play games, I guess, so this next one here seems rather fitting. Seeing as it takes place in a Toys R Us. Yeah, you heard me. Bay Area's haunted Toys R Us. They locked its doors forever as of 2018. The aisles may be closed, but along with the vibe in this room. I don't know what kind of party this is, but this dude does not blend in. He got the wrong memo. He's like, oh, I thought you said it was like a costume kind of thing with like hoods. They're like, no, it's formal, Roger. Come on. Nobody else was seen wearing a hood like this, so many believe it was a dark part of the afterlife. Just, photobombing this event. Demons, always pranksters, hopping in at photos, peeking around corners. Classic, they like pranks. Number 5, the Amityville photo. This photo was taken inside the Amityville house back in 1976. It appears to be a young boy with glowing white eyes. He's pretty hard to miss there. See him? Right there. Yeah, you got it. Nice. Good eye. At first, I thought this was from a horror movie that I missed, Like it looks so obviously fake or set up in some way until you start to read up on the details. This photo was taken with automatic cameras equipped with infrared, so this young lad here probably wasn't expecting a selfie. Photographer Gene Campbell took this photo in 1976, and Gene at the time was working with paranormal investigators Ed and Lorraine Warren. So that's how you know this bit of history here is real, to some degree. The photo was revealed 3 years after it was taken on the Merv Griffin show, and many believe this is the ghost of the young John DeFeo, one of the boys who lived there in 1974. Number 4, the Spectre of Newby Church. From all the way back in 1963, this photo has been passed around from time to time. We've mentioned it on this channel before. It's pretty good. It's one of the most convincing, if you ask me, considering its date. Is this the demon of General Grievous from Star Wars? This guy's, what is going on here? He's haunting, very tall. Looks like he has 4 lightsabers. Reverend K.F. Lord took this photo in England at the Newby Church, and Lord ensures us that this photo is 100% real. Would anybody named Lord lie to us? I'm just saying. I think not. The photo looks too good to be true, I'll admit. This entity is literally facing the camera, so I get it. The figure appears to stand on the first step of the altar, yet somehow it's still taller than the altar. Super Tall Demons from 1963. This was almost number 1. Almost. You'll see. Number 3, a helping hand. This photo is pretty old, hence convincing. This time the photographer may or may not have caught a floating spirit hands. Apparently they're a thing. Awesome. I'll show you the photo, you let me know if you see it at first. Take a good look. Anything sticking out? Any little creepy hands crawling around? No? This photo is a group of women who worked in a linen factory. The lady on the far right appears she has an extra hand there, resting on her shoulder. At a weird angle too. Maybe she was scratching her back and then was like, hey, cheese. No, it's impossible. I did the math. I tried. There's no way. I'm a lanky guy. I tried this in the office. There's no way. This is definitely a demon hand. It looks curled almost, a hand. Like, I don't want to roast somebody's hand and say it looks demonic. It's just the fact that we can see the open space next to the right of the lady in the photo and there's nobody standing there. That's what makes this convincing. I'm not like, oh, it's a skinny, veiny hand. That's got to be a ghost. Some guy's like, thanks, man. What? No, there's no one standing there. That's the whole point. This reminds me of the movie Idle Hands. This gives me the creeps. That movie scared me growing up. I don't like it. Phantom hands? No thank you. Unless you're hitting that thumbs up there shall be no phantom hands in my premise. Number 2, ancient Egyptian demon paintings. Yes, I said paintings, okay? Hear me out. This list is full of the most convincing paranormal photos on the internet, but I had to toss in a little treat, a little historical treat. Demons have been putting fear into the minds of ancient Egyptians even 4,000 years ago. Yeah, demonology is not a new thing. It's not like horror movies came out and it's like, oh, there's demons now. Old, really old. Back in 2016, Whale Sherbany, who specializes in ancient religious texts, found the image of not 1, but 2 demons. They found them painted on 2 Middle Kingdom coffins. The demon represented here is the demon Ikinti. It's represented as a large bird with a cat's head, a black cat's head. This evidence was presented at the International Conference on Ancient Egyptian Demonology over at Swansea University in the United Kingdom. Am I attending the wrong meetings in life? I need to go check out some ancient Egyptian demonology conferences. That sounds like a great time. What? Another example of demons being present in ancient Egyptian days was the image of Amut. Amut is a female demon whose body was part hippo, part crocodile, and part lion. Hard to miss. And finally, coming in at number 1, the Manila Demon. No, I didn't say vanilla demon. That sounds delicious. This is much scarier. This is one of my biggest fears in life, okay? To go on a trip, take a bunch of photos with a wind-up camera, that would be the worst. Come back and then find something haunting that I missed in real life in the photos, right? That's like every horror movie, it's the worst. That's exactly what happened when 2 friends posed for a photo together in the Philippines. This was back in 2000. At the time, they didn't feel anybody grab their arm, which I fully believe because there's no reaction in this photo. Also, if somebody was that close, somebody they didn't know, there's no chance they would sneak into the frame that quickly. Also, is this demon Dobby the house elf? What? This is not a haunting look, but it's definitely a look. It looks like a bridge troll with tiny hands. But either way, I'm all set.
Number 10. Royal Air Force Squadron. This photo, taken in 1919, was first published in 1975 by Sir Victor Goddard, a retired RFA officer. The photo is a group portrait of Victor's squadron, which had served in World War I at the HMS Daedalus training facility. This isn't a normal photo though, as an extra ghostly face appears in the photo. In the back of the airman positioned on the top row, fourth from the left, you can clearly see the face of another man. It's said to be the face of Freddie Jackson, an air mechanic who had accidentally died from an airplane propeller 2 days earlier. And let me just mention, his funeral had taken place on the day this photograph was taken. Members of the squadron easily recognized the face as Freddie's. I mean, it was his funeral, he just wanted to be a part of the photo. It has also been suggested that Freddie, unaware of his death, decided to show up for the group photo, which is just sad. Number 9. Combremere Abbey Library. In 1891, Cybele Corbett took a photo of the Combremere Abbey Library in Cheshire, England. Cybele was an amateur photographer who allegedly set up her camera and took this hour-long exposure while at the funeral of her brother-in-law, Lord Combremere, was taking place 4 miles from the home. When the plate was developed, the transparent image of a man sitting in one of the library chairs was noticed. Many of the staff said the image looked like the late second Viscount, and the apparition happened to be sitting in Lord Combremere's favorite chair. So, you know, it's obviously him. It's thought by some that a servant might have come into the room and sat briefly in the chair, thus creating the image, but this idea was refuted by members of Lord Combremere's household. Lord Combremere's father, the first Viscount, had been involved in a mysterious incident himself years earlier while serving as governor of Barbados, when he had the Chase vault opened and carefully examined in search of an explanation for the moving coffins there. Seems like him and his father have both had some paranormal experiences, both in life and death. Number 8. The Watcher of Corroboree Rock. The rock formation near Alice Springs, Australia, known as Corroboree Rock, is made of dolomite that was formed more than 800 million years ago, and it's considered a sacred site by the Arrernte Aboriginal people. With that much history behind it and that much importance assigned to it, it makes sense that there's someone or something that looks over it. That's why the spirit is called the Watcher of Corroboree Rock. Now, no one really knows exactly who or what it is, but one photo of it dates back to the 1950s. In either 1956 or 1959, reports vary, a minister from Adelaide snapped the photo during a visit to the rock formation, and it's been puzzling people ever since. According to the minister, Reverend R.S. Lance, there was no one around when the photograph was taken, however, but when he developed it, the ghostly figure now seen in the image appeared. It's kinda nice to know that there's something taking care and watching over that area, no? Number 7. Leeds General Infirmary. Now, why wouldn't there be a creepy ghost photo taken in a hospital? With many patients' lives ending and beginning there, those places are full of spirits. Now, this photo isn't an extremely well-known ghost photo, but it's still creepy nonetheless. This photo was taken at Leeds General Infirmary by Andrew Milburn. The photo shows what appears to be a ghost nurse or patient fleeing into a room in a hospital corridor. Andrew took the photo to show his girlfriend where he was in the hospital and did not mean to capture a ghost. He didn't know this ghost was in the photo until he reviewed it more closely. Andrew had always been skeptical about ghosts, but seeing this figure changed his mind, and honestly, that would change my mind too. Number 6. Whaley House. Known worldwide as the most haunted house in America, the Whaley House is recognized for its historical significance in Old Town San Diego. They do haunted tours on the property, and this family went on a tour and got their photo taken. In the photo, you can see the brown outline of someone or something in between the two adults. Now, there are multiple people this could be. One of the most infamous ghosts in San Diego is the spirit of Yankee Jim Robinson. Yankee Jim was hanged in the house in 1852 after being convicted of stealing horses. Thomas Whaley himself, who owned and lived in the house with his family's years later, had said they could hear heavy footsteps going up and down the stairs. Visitors have reported cold spots and the feeling of their chest and throat tightening while in the home. Others claim to have seen Yankee Jim too, an apparition that appears and disappears when you get close. This ghost in the photo could also be Thomas Whaley himself. Today, and for many years, visitors of the house have reported seeing Thomas. One guest waved to a man she said she saw standing in the parlor. No one else could see the man, but when asked what he looked like, she described a man wearing period clothing that resembled Thomas. Adults too have seen him wearing a frock coat and pantaloons standing on the second-story landing, and others have seen his wife, Anna, usually floating about in the garden or in the downstairs room. Her ghost ghost, which appears white and billowy, seems to just drift about and then disappears. So with so much ghost activity in that house, I am sure it's one of those spirits. Number 5. Tantallon Castle. Tantallon Castle dates back to the 14th century, stands on a remote headland near North Berwick, and was badly damaged in an attack by Oliver Cromwell's forces in 1651. A photo taken there shows a ghostly figure. The photo, taken by Christopher Anachin in 2009, still remains an unsolved mystery. It's a photo of a man in what appears to be 16th century clothes. It's known that no mannequins or cost guides are used within the castle, and experts have confirmed through analysis that there is no digital alterations at play. Even skeptics have been left baffled by the image after tests confirmed no technological trickery is at play. Psychologist Professor Richard Wiseman from the University of Hertfordshire, who studied the picture, said the figure appears to be in a period costume, but we know 100% that the Tantallon Castle is not the sort of place that has mannequins or costume guides. Seems like an old spirit just wanted to take a look outside. Number 4. Nottingham Galleries of Justice. One of the best ghostly sightings caught on film is this spooky black figure photographed by Simon Brown, who is a qualified parapsychologist. He was spending the day at the old Galleries of Justice with his brother and was simply taking photographs of the building. Although Simon says he didn't notice anything while taking the images, when he downloaded them onto his computer, he noticed what appeared to be a black figure shadow that seemed to have walked through a brick wall. Staff at the galleries have corroborated Simon's story, saying that they too have seen similar figures and have experienced similar paranormal encounters, but have not yet been able to capture anything on film. They've seen ghostly apparitions, dealt with poltergeist activity, and had doors slam on their own. Simon also mentioned when discussing the figure that it appeared to be in turn-of-the-century prisoner dress, dragging a leg behind him as though he was in chains. All I can say is creepy. Number 3. New home. Buying a new house is a fun and exciting time. But what if you bought a house that you didn't know was haunted? Seems like that's what happened to Michelle midwinter. Michelle had bought a new house in England and she took a photo of it to send to her friends and family. She'd gone outside, snapped a photo, and returned to the inside of the house when she noticed a face staring back at her in the bottom right window of the house. I'm sorry, when you zoom in, you can clearly see a nose, eyes, and shoulders, and the face of a man staring back at you. Now, Michelle didn't pack up her bags and leave right away, which I'll never understand. Instead, she posted the image online and was eventually contacted by a historian local in her area who believed that the apparition in the image could have been a man known as Old Man Kent, who was thought to be a suspect in a death back in 1860. Initially, Michelle dismissed the image as nothing more than reflections and refractions of light from the flowers outside her window, but following further paranormal sightings and activity within the house, such as cold spots and lights flickering, it seems like Michelle is now a believer. I can't believe having to live in a house like that. Number 2. Bedroom ghost. In 2005, a teenage girl had just gotten her first digital camera. She was messing around, experimenting with the features, and taking photos of her friend Tommy. The two photos were taken seconds apart. The first was taken with flash and the second was taken without. When taking the photo, the photographer and her friend were the only people in the room at the time, but there's clearly another person in the photo on the right. It looks like an older person wearing glasses, and I mean there's clearly someone there. The girl said that unusual things were always happening in her family's house as there were noises and things moved. Maybe it was the spirit who was doing all this and decided to reveal themselves. If I took a photo of a ghost in my bedroom though, I would never sleep there again. And coming in at number 1 is the ghost in the water. In 2014, Kim Davidson was swimming in a lake with a friend and their combined 3 children. They went to Murphy's Hole in Lochar River in Queensland, Australia. While there, they took a photograph. Normal, right? But when the photograph came out, there was a ghostly figure of a girl behind the group who looked like she'd been leering behind the family. They said that there was nothing in between them when the photo was taken, and on close examining the image, they realized it was a white face with dark eyes and 2 horns on either side of the head. Its fingers are on Kim's shoulder and on the small girl's right arm. Kim posted it on Facebook, and upon seeing the image, many comments were made, some saying that the 2 horns looked like 2 ponytails or buns. A fellow user shared the story of Doreen O'Sullivan, O'Sullivan, a girl who accidentally drowned in the same creek in the same spot in 1913. Her obituary was found in the Brisbane Courier, dated the 22nd of November 1913. The notice reads that Doreen O'Sullivan, aged 13 years, the oldest daughter of Mr. James O'Sullivan, was accidentally drowned whilst bathing in the Lockyer Creek on Friday afternoon. Nearly an hour elapsed before the body was recovered. Now, the spot, which has always been considered dangerous, is known as Murphy's Hole and is over 20 feet deep. Upon reading this, Kim recollected that they had experienced strange things that day while they were swimming in water. She felt someone's presence behind her, but she ignored it. Twice, someone in the water even grabbed her elder daughter's leg. This made Kim believe in the presence of a spirit in the water. By looking at the picture, she was convinced that the unknown face was that of Doreen. Kim got 2 paranormal experts to check out the photo, and after investigating the photograph carefully, they concluded that the shape of the image was that of a child.
But we're gonna look at them because
You're
why
gonna see
not?
it. We're starting off with a very harrowing image right off the bat. A red-eyed demon lady staring into a dude's car. Just take a look at this nightmare fuel. The creepiest thing about this video is that the woman just does not move an inch. She just stares wide-eyed into the car, completely frozen the whole time. I don't know. This one just kind of got under my skin a little bit. At one point I actually started averting my eyes from the screen just to avoid her glare. I also didn't know if there's gonna be some kind of a pop-up scare of some kind. Her face is hard to read. She's kind of doing this blank, dead-eyed, 1,000-yard stare, and because you can't make out any emotion on her face, just makes the whole thing even more unsettling. Of course, it could totally be a hoax, but I do find this one pretty effectively freaky. The red, unblinking eyes, the fact that she looks like she's covered in mud, it's just very strange. If anyone knows more about this video, please let me know down in the comments.
Next up, we have an image of an institutionalized woman taken in the 1900s, committed in France at a time when mental health was incredibly misunderstood and people suffering from epilepsy were often seen as being possessed by the devil. It's unclear what the woman in the photo suffered from or why she was imprisoned in the French institution in which the photo was taken, but what is clear is the fact that when the photo was taken, she had been forcibly restrained at the feet, by the wrists, and around the waist, a common practice for those suffering from delusions or fits at the time. For me personally, what stands out most about this photo, taken at a time in which demons were to blame for the majority of mental ailments, is that her body is positioned in the image of a cross. Whether or not this was directly intentional is unknown, but spooky nonetheless, not to mention super unethical.
Next on the list, we have this video of a goat walking on its hind legs. This video has been reposted so many times, so I'm not exactly sure who the original uploader is. I think it's Youngstar TV. Anyway, the short clip shows a goat walking on its hind legs into a barn, being followed close behind by a chicken. Some people find this clip kind of funny. The folks behind the camera are chuckling. I'd definitely be entertained if I were, visiting that farm, but if I were the farmer, I'd probably be keeping my eye on that goat from that point on. I'd probably laugh at first, but that laugh would probably disintegrate into an uncomfortable chuckle as soon as I realized that Baphomet was living right outside where I slept. And who the hell knows what it's thinking and planning? A chicken was following close behind him. Was this goat gathering farm animals together to stage a coup? Start leading a chicken army to take over the farm? Animals walking around like humans without being instructed to just gives me the creeps. When you see videos of dogs just walking on their hind legs, it's not right. It doesn't look right. It's no, stop that, please.
Next up, human dolls. It really doesn't get much more demonic than this. These lifelike dolls were created by a man named Anatoly Moskvin, a former Russian journalist who, let's face it, was absolutely bat crazy. Oh, and when I say these dolls were lifelike, I mean it. Why? Well, because they were made of human flesh. Anyways, Moskvin was also a self-proclaimed grave expert, and he spent many years digging up the bodies of young women to use for his sick art projects. Each doll he made was carefully kept inside his home. He thought of them as both companions and lovers, and even admitted to engaging in physical contact with the creations in his writings. For many years, Moskvin and his deranged projects flew under the radar, but he was eventually caught in 2011 after police grew suspicious of the rising number of desecrated graves in the area. When officials searched the home of Moskvin, they found 26 life-size dolls, which were basically just mummified corpses laid out around the man's home like they were living there. I guess you could argue that what he did isn't technically demonic, but it's for sure demented.
This next video is taken in Mexico at a church. The priest was in the middle of leading a sermon when suddenly you hear this loud, distressed scream coming from somewhere. Take a listen.
El Señor esté con ustedes y con tu espíritu.
Now, it's hard to make out what the voice is saying, especially because I don't speak Spanish. Some people have said it sounds like a woman screaming, "Please help." Now, there's not a ton of info behind this clip, but apparently the priest immediately stopped the sermon after that. Even in the short clip, you see him step down from the podium as his voice kind of like trails off. He seems pretty unsettled. And I mean, fair enough. Ghostly screams echoing through a church is probably gonna throw off your rhythm just a little bit.
Next up, we have a photograph taken during the exorcism of Annalise Mitchell. In the late 1960s, the young woman began to exhibit increasingly alarming behaviors, causing both her and her parents to believe that she had been possessed by the devil. After a while of watching Annalise routinely convulse, hallucinate, eat spiders, and consume her own urine, they decided it was time to call in the big guns: exorcists. But unfortunately for Annalise and her family, the first exorcism didn't take, or the second, or the third. In total, Annalise Mitchell underwent 67 exorcisms throughout her life, none of which seemed to do the young woman any good. She died of malnutrition in 1976, or at least that's what they say she died of. She was 23 years old and just 68 pounds. The last image taken of the woman alive is a true testament to the torment she endured throughout her life. And not only that, but the events of the poor woman's life actually are what inspired the 2005 horror film, The Exorcism of Emily Rose.
This is not the face you want to see in an alleyway in the middle of the night. It looks like Reagan from The Exorcist. I'd be running away crying too if I saw that. Though this guy did stick around for a while. He just kind of stared with the camera at this demonic thing as it was just kind of, yeah. Freaky. I don't know where this video is from. I don't know the backstory. It sounds like the guy is speaking Arabic. Some commenters have said that this demon thing could be a jinn. Whatever it is, it's creepy as hell. Of course, it could be a hoax, but whatever. Like a mysterious video with some nightmarish imagery always works for me.
Next up, nuclear shadows. After the 1945 bombing of Hiroshima on August 6th by the United States, not much was left in the areas in which the blast went off. Somewhere around 80,000 people lost their lives due to the explosion, which went off about 1,900 feet above the city's center. When the nuclear weapon, often referred to as Little Boy, detonated, it caused the surrounding area to reach temperatures of up to 10,000 degrees Fahrenheit, which completely obliterated anything within 1,600 feet of the blast zone. Not only that, but the extreme heat caused bleaching to occur on the city's exposed surfaces like buildings, roads, sidewalks, staircases, you name it. However, in places where people stood during the blast, bleaching did not occur. Bodies would protect the surface from the heat flash as they themselves were incinerated in mere moments. To look at these images now is pretty disturbing.
Next up, we have a sleep paralysis demon. This clip was shared to TikTok by Nightmare Fuel with the description reading, "If you suffer from sleep paralysis, please do not watch." Well, too late for me. I watched it. In the video, we see a man sleeping in bed. A thermal imaging camera has been set up. The man lays motionless in bed without any context. We think he was just sound asleep, but that's not exactly the case. Turns out he was experiencing a round of sleep paralysis, but the chilling part comes in when we see something being picked up on the thermal imaging camera that we can't see on the normal camera. It looks like some sort of entity climbing onto the bed and crouching on the man's chest, which is the exact feeling people would describe having when experiencing sleep paralysis. Sometimes people will say they even see some sort of entity as well. Sleep paralysis, ain't it a barrel of laughs? I've had sleep paralysis a number of times, more so when I was younger, but every once in a while it still shows up for an impromptu visit at 3 a.m. Next time it happens, I'll be thinking of this video. So, thanks for that.
And finally, we have the rather haunting or demonic, perhaps, message left behind by William Hirons on December 10th of 1945, moments before he brutally took the life of Frances Brown. The message, written on the wall in Brown's home and in her own red lipstick, read, "For heaven's sake, catch me before I kill again. I cannot control myself," thus giving Hirons the name the Lipstick Killer. After writing the message, Hirons impaled Brown with a large blade and then wrapped her head in towels before fleeing the scene. Prior to killing Brown, Hirons had actually taken the life of another woman named Josephine Ross in a similar fashion. She had been impaled before having her skirt wrapped around her head. But in the case of Ross, her wounds had been taped shut. The last woman Hirons killed was Suzanne Degnan. She was taken from her bedroom, and 12 hours later her head was found floating in a sewer near her family home. Hirons was finally arrested after an attempted B&E, and while in interrogation he admitted to being the Lipstick Killer and was sentenced to life in prison. However, many discrepancies make his incarceration quite controversial, but I will save that for another video.
Number 10. SS Watertown. In December 1924, James Courtney and Michael Meehan were crew members on the SS Watertown. They were cleaning a cargo tank of the oil tanker, and they were overcome by gas fumes, which resulted in both of their deaths. Due to this, the crew buried them at sea, but to their astonishment, the ghostly faces of the soldiers appeared in the water the next day. Yeah, like in the waves. Later on, many other crew members reported seeing the faces as well. The faces were so visible that the captain of the ship ordered them to take a picture of them to have for proof, so people didn't think that they were crazy. And this was smart, because if someone told me they saw faces of two dead men in the water, I would probably never talk to them again and think that they were cuckoo. Although, in the picture, you can clearly see two faces, which is just plain creepy. When the SS Watertown returned to land, the negative was even checked for fakery and proclaimed genuine. So yeah, just two faces chilling in the waves. No big deal. Number 9. The Nurse. This photo was taken in an abandoned tuberculosis hospital in Louisville, Kentucky called Waverly Hills Sanatorium in 2006. As you can imagine, many people passed away here, and it's rumored to be filled with paranormal activity. In recent years, it has become one of America's most popular destinations for ghost hunters. This image depicts a woman just standing to the right side, but when the photo was taken, no one was there. It was a ghost. It has been agreed among the paranormal community that the photo depicts Mary Lee, a nurse who took her own life in the hospital. The story goes this poor woman was impregnated by a doctor who worked in the hospital, but later wanted nothing to do with her. Nowadays, she wanders the halls of the hospital and interacts with ghost hunters. Number 8. Tulip Staircase. Reverend Ralph Hardy, a retired clergyman from White Rock, British Columbia, took this famous photograph in 1966. Originally, he only wanted to take a picture of the elegant tulip staircase in the Queen's House section of the National Maritime Museum in Greenwich, England. And I mean, I don't blame him. They're pretty. But upon development, the photo revealed a shrouded figure climbing the stairs. It's strange and unsettling, and Ralph said there was no one else in the frame when he took it. Experts who examined the original negative concluded that it had not been tampered with. The vicinity of the staircase is rumored to be haunted, and unexplained footsteps have often been heard there, so it's most likely something supernatural who just wanted their photo taken. Number 7. The Brown Lady. The Brown Lady of Raynham Hall is a ghost that reportedly haunts Raynham Hall in Norfolk, England. It became one of the most famous hauntings in the United Kingdom when photographers from Country Life magazine claimed to have captured its image. According to the legend, the Brown Lady is the ghost of Dorothy Walpole, the sister of Robert Walpole, generally regarded as the first Prime Minister of Great Britain. She was the second wife of Charles Townshend, second Viscount Townshend, who was notorious for his violent temper. The story goes that when Charles discovered discovered that his wife had committed adultery with Lord Wharton, he punished her by locking her in her rooms in the family home, Raynham Hall. According to Mary Wortley Montagu, Dorothy was in fact entrapped by the Countess of Wharton. She invited Dorothy over to stay for a few days, knowing that her husband would never allow her to leave, not even to see her children. She remained at the Raynham Hall until her death in 1726 from smallpox. This is just an extremely sad story, and I can't imagine her pain. The first sighting of the Brown Lady was in 1835, and the photograph was taken in 1936. Number 6. Falling through the ceiling. Back in the 1950s, the Cooper family from Texas moved into their new house. Once there, they took a family photo, which seems normal, right? Well, not for them. When the picture was developed, the image of a body falling from the ceiling was clearly visible. To be clear, no one fell from the ceiling when they took the photo, so what happened? As further investigation on the story has brought no plausible explanation, there exist many speculations, including one that argues that the shadow is the ghost of the previous owner of the house. But my question is, why is he falling from the ceiling, and why did he have to ruin that beautiful family photo? I remember seeing this photo on the internet when I was probably too young to see it, and after all these years, this image still gives me chills. Ugh. Number 5. Backseat Ghost. On March 22nd, 1959, Mabel Chinnery and her husband drove to the graveyard in which her mother had been buried. Her mother had died a week previously, and they were going to take photos of her grave, and they did. As Mabel returned to the car, she decided to use her last remaining shot to take a candid picture of her husband waiting in the vehicle on the passenger side. Nothing was out of the ordinary, it was just a random photo, but when the pictures were developed, one of Mabel's friends pointed out that someone, believed to be her mother, appeared to be behind her husband in the back seat of the car. Now, was the figure her mother or some other spirit? Who knows? I mean, they were in a graveyard, it could have been anyone or anything. The photograph itself wasn't seen in the United States until the story got a whole page in the Sunday newspaper. Mabel stated that the spot where the unexpected figure appeared in the back of the car is where her mother always sat when they went for drives, so it makes sense that it could be her. An unnamed photo expert is quoted as saying, "The lady in the back can't be the result of a double exposure. If it were, the doors upright wouldn't block off part of her face, and she can't be a reflection in the window either." So maybe it really is Mabel's mother. Number 4. Wem Ghost. On November 19th, 1995, Wem Town Hall burned to the ground in Wem, Shropshire, located in England. During the fire, Tony O'Rahilly, a sewage farm worker who was also an amateur photographer, was originally stopped by police from approaching the burning building. He took a picture of the blaze from across the street with a 200mm lens. It appeared to depict the image of a young girl in the doorway of the burning building. Now, to be clear, there were no injuries or fatalities from the fire. This was not a human. Locals who saw the photo believed it was the ghost of Jane Churm, a young girl who was accused in 1677 of starting a fire in the same town. The image of the girl in the doorway of the burning building was not noticed by Tony, the photographer, or the onlookers. It only appeared after the photo had been developed. I mean, if she was accused of starting a fire and then she popped back up in an area where another fire started, it seems like it really could be Jane. Number 3. The Spectre of Newby Church. The Spectre of Newby Church is the name given to a figure in the photograph taken in the Church of Christ the Consoler on the grounds of Newby Hall in North Yorkshire, United Kingdom. The image was taken in 1963 by the Reverend Kenneth F. Lord. As the figure appears to resemble a human, much speculation has been had regarding what type of person might be in the image. Most speculation by believers has concluded that it resembles a 16th century monk with a white shroud over his face, possibly to mask leprosy or another disfigurement. Others believe it looks like a plague doctor from the 16th and 17th centuries. Initial claims suggest that the figure would measure at 9 feet tall, but its feet are not visible, so it could easily be standing on a box, giving the impression of height. Some people thought the photo was due to double exposure, but photographic experts have concluded that the image is not the result of double exposure. So what was it, and why was it in a church? No one truly knows, but it's extremely frightening. What does it look like to you? Let me know in the comments. Number 2. Mystery Guest. On January 22nd, 1985, the Coventry Freeman organization and their guests stood in prayer during a dinner event. All the guests are still, and as it was a dark room, the photographer probably thought it would be the perfect time to allow for a longer than usual exposure to get enough light into the picture. makes sense. Now, nothing was out of the ordinary at the time, but as people started to see the print of the picture, a mystery surfaced. Who was the robed figure standing near the end of one of the tables? No one had dressed up for the event, and no one remembers anyone standing there as they stood for prayer. The figure also seems to be taking part in the prayer, head slightly bowed, hands clasped in front. St. Mary's Conventry, Warwickshire is where the event was hosted. It has many legends of ghosts and paranormal activity, but I wonder why this being decided to join in prayer. It just gives me bad vibes, like evil lurks within it. And coming in at number 1 is the Young Boy. One of the most famous haunted houses in the United States is the Dutch Colonial House at 112 Ocean Avenue in Amityville, New York. The haunting stems from the night of November 13th, 1974, when 23-year-old Ronald Defoe ended the lives of all 6 members of his family. He was then arrested, convicted, and given 6 concurrent life sentences. In December of 1975, George and Kathy Lutz, along with their 3 children, moved into the house and claimed that spooky things were happening. For example, George would wake up at 3:15 every morning, which was the approximate time that Ronald committed his crimes. Kathy said she would feel a ghostly presence and be embraced by it. All of this and more caused the family to flee in fear after only staying in the house for 28 days, and honestly, I don't blame them. Due to this, demonologists Ed and Lorraine Warren visited the house and set up time-lapse infrared cameras and caught this photo. The picture wasn't made public until 3 years later when George Lutz appeared on the Merv Griffith Show in 1979. Believers of the haunting think that the picture is the ghost of the youngest Defoe son, John Matthew, who was 9 at the time. Others believed it's a staged photo, but despite its controversy, this picture is one of the most frightening images from the Amityville horror.
And we're starting things off at number 10 with the red ghost. Now, this is actually a piece of footage, not a photo, but like I always say, footage is typically more entertaining anyway. This clip was sent to the YouTube channel Vault of Fear, who shared it online. The name of the church isn't given, nor is the location, but we see the camera person filming the church. Now, they either have terrible cinematography skills, or they're just kind of nervous because they saw something before they started filming. I'm not sure which. They eventually rest on the church altar though, where we clearly see a semi-translucent red figure walk from left to right. It then seems to crouch down before completely vanishing. This could definitely be a hoax, but if it isn't, and this is just what the person captured in camera, it's pretty incredible. Definitely not a trick of the light or anything. That looks like a figure walking across the floor. What do you all think though? Hoax? Genuine? Share your thoughts down below, and leave your comments down below even if you don't have any thoughts on this, and hit that subscribe button while you're at it. Nothing to lose. Number 9. Spooky figures. Back in 2017, 35-year-old Leah Harrison, visiting Lincoln Cathedral, captured something strange in a picture she snapped. She described the figure as looking like the ghostly figures of a woman and a boy, possibly the ghosts of a mother and son. It's kind of hard to make out these figures. They could definitely just be smudges or pixelation from the camera, but what adds to the credibility possible ghosts caught on camera here is that this church is said to be haunted. With it being constructed all the way back in 1072, the place certainly has a lot of history, so if these mysterious figures are indeed ghosts, then who could they be? Well, there's an interesting tale surrounding this church, and it all started in 1349 during the bubonic plague. As the Black Death swept over the town of Lincoln, the bodies began piling up, and the church, being overrun with corpses, eventually piled a bunch of them in a mass grave next to the cathedral. The spirits of those buried without proper ceremony or blessing are said to haunt the grounds, rising on the anniversary of their burial, forever trapped between heaven and hell. Sticking with Lincoln Cathedral for a moment, let's talk about the haunted well, pictured here. This well is associated with an urban legend surrounding the devil. Now, the well definitely has an old allure about it, being constructed nearly 1,000 years ago, but there's nothing immediately unsettling about it at first glance. But legend has it, if you walk around the well 7 times and stick your finger into one of the holes in the door, the devil himself will cast judgment on you. If you're deemed a good person, you'll simply feel his breath on your finger, but if he deems you a real miserable piece of crap, he'll chomp your finger clean off. What constitutes bad or good to Satan? That's hard to say. I think it's safe to assume though that sticking your finger into strange holes is probably not the best idea without knowing exactly what's going on in there. Next, we have St. Mary's Church in Ackenham. St. Mary's Church is rumored to be haunted by the devil. According to local legends, the devil is believed to rest beneath the church, specifically beneath a broken tombstone known as the Devil's Grave. The church, situated in the small village of Ackenham, hopefully I'm pronouncing that right, has gained a reputation for supernatural occurrences over the years. The tale goes that the devil himself is said to have chosen this location as his resting place. The focal point of this belief is a particular tombstone within the churchyard, colloquially referred to as the Devil's Grave. And legend goes that disturbing the Devil's Grave could cause the Lord of Darkness himself to rise, inviting malevolent forces into the world. At number 6, we have another St. Mary's Church, this one in Clophill. If I were to conjure up an image in my mind of a haunted church, probably look exactly like this. This 14th century chapel fell into disuse in 1848, and over the years, it's gained a reputation for being a haunted site with possible satanic activity. During the 60s, evidence of disturbing activities surfaced when the church and its grounds were investigated. The walls of the chapel were found covered in graffiti with occult symbols and ritualistic markings on it. Graves in the churchyard had been disturbed, pointing to possible disturbing activities taking place on the grounds. There are also urban legends associated with this place too. One legend goes that the church is haunted by the devil, mostly because of the orientation of the church altar. And traditionally, Christian churches are constructed to face the eastern direction, symbolizing the direction of the heavens and the anticipated coming of the Messiah. But in the case of St. Mary's Church, the altar faces the southern direction. Number 5, St. Nicholas's Church in Pluckley. If that's not an English sounding name, I don't know what is. Pluckley. Look at this spooky image here. I don't think it gets any more classically gothic horror than that either. St. Nicholas's Church in Pluckley, as well as the town itself, is said to be very, very haunted. The church, dating back several centuries, has become known for its paranormal activity. Legend goes that the churchyard is haunted by various spirits. Visitors claim to have witnessed apparitions and strange occurrences in and around the church. Haunted occurrences range from ghostly figures to unexplained sounds. One of the most well-known spirits said to haunt the grounds is known as the Red Lady, who roams the church grounds at night in search of her stillborn child. Pluckley as a town has also earned quite the reputation, said to be the most haunted village in Britain. The village's population to ghost ratio is very out of whack. It's a small place, but it has 12 known ghosts roaming around it. And at number 4, we have Rouse Church. This is a 12th century sandstone church in the Czech Republic. It's adorned with a peculiar feature above its main entrance, a small stone face believed to depict the devil. The legend surrounding this traces back to the church's construction and involves a local troll. According to the lore, during the church's initial construction, a troublesome troll, one of those in the comments that keeps asking about people's hair. I wonder if this is him. Anyway, this troll, angered by the sound of church bells, consistently disrupted the building process by moving materials across a stream every night. Frustrated builders eventually abandoned the site altogether, choosing to build the church in its current location nearby. Still discontented, the troll decided to relocate 26 miles northwest to Kullaberg. There, the troll expressed a desire to return home, but claimed he was hindered by what he called the jingling gray mare, a reference to the church and its chiming bells, which he was too afraid to name directly. The church's distinctive stone head above the entrance is linked to this legend. There are 3 main theories about its origin. One goes that it represents Ra, the giant, credited with the church's construction, another associating with Roland, a medieval Christian knight, and the most prominent belief is that it portrays the devil. The idea here is that the devil's face is seen as a protective measure against trolls and malevolent beings. And at number 3, the Spectre of Newby Church. This image here is very famous, taken in 1963 by Reverend Kenneth F. Lord in the Church of Christ the Consoler, found on the grounds of Newby Hall in North Yorkshire. Reverend Lord had been photographing the church. Nothing seemed out of the ordinary, but once he developed the pictures, he discovered a mysterious semi-translucent cloaked figure standing at the church altar. Reverend Lord claimed to be alone in the church at the time of taking the photo. The figure in the image looks a lot like a plague doctor or some malevolent type of spirit. It definitely doesn't look friendly, but skeptics quickly dismissed the photograph as a hoax, saying it was probably just double exposure or something. So Reverend Lord sent the photograph to experts to be examined, and according to their findings at the time, the photo showed no signs of tampering. Apparently, at least according to them, the image was genuine. And at number 2, we have Chernobyl Church. Pretty much any photo taken in Chernobyl is going to be eerie, given the context that it's the site of one of the worst nuclear disasters in history, but the abandoned church has to be one of the creepiest abandoned sites. That and the abandoned school probably takes second place. The church is beautiful, but looking at these images, it's hard not to have this strange feeling about it. Human beings are just designed to be a little uncomfortable in big, empty places where there should be people. Falls into that liminal spaces realm of horror. Plus, the church is in the middle, again, of Chernobyl, so apart from the harmful air, you have mutated animals and God knows what else lurking around. Imagine having to spend a whole night alone in this place with nothing but a sleeping bag and a flashlight. Would you do that for like $500? I'd consider it. If anyone wants to offer me like an e-transfer for $500 to like stay in one of these haunted places, I might consider it. That could be fun to film. Finally, though, we have St. George's Church in Czech Republic. This is what this abandoned church looks like now. Built in the 14th century, this Gothic marvel faced abandonment in the 1960s because of structural concerns. People had already thought the place was haunted, but then the roof literally caved in on the place during mass one day, which certainly didn't make people feel any less uneasy about going into the place. Over the years, the church was broken into, vandalized, and robbed. Believing the place was culturally significant, artist Jacob Hadrava stepped in with a unique vision to breathe some life into the decaying church. Instead of the usual restoration, he populated the place, all the empty pews, with ghostly sculptures crafted from plaster. And these eerie figures now sit in this sacred place, frozen in a congregation that blurs the line between art and the supernatural. Stories of a haunting atmosphere within this church still persist today. Some claim to sense an otherworldly presence as they explore the dimly lit space with whispers of ghostly apparitions and unexplained sounds. With all that said, I've been your host James, and I'll catch you, yes you specifically, in the next video.